So it's now my pleasure to introduce the president of Edgewood College, Dr. Scott Flanagan. Scott.
Thanks, Dean. Ed has offered to follow me around with music, but he still keeps saying, "Eye of the Tiger." So he suggested that in the fall. Still haven't done that. And I didn't know that Mary was going to use a book as a starting point for her point of departure, so that will make the transition a little bit easier. So I was returning last week. I was attending the Council of Independent Colleges President's Meeting, which was ended just a week ago. And you get all sorts, right? I know there are all sort of visions of all the elaborate things that happen at these, but actually it's a lot of meetings and tremendous gifts, including books from vendors. So I thought, well, I'm going to do a little bit of reading on the flight home. And so I pull out one book. This is called Financial Strategy for Higher Education. I'm pretty sure it did not take, like, it was not quite as painstakingly prepared as the image. And I don't know who chose the cover. This is a tiger, and it makes no sense. The book makes no reference. So I plug in my headphones. I hit play on some music. I open the book, and I fall asleep. And when I wake, so Mike, maybe this is some reading for you if you're having a hard time sleeping. So when I wake up, Bob Dylan is playing, and the song is "The Times They Are A-Changin'," and I'm like, yeah, that's it. Because that's so much of what you hear at these conferences. I know you experience the same thing when you go off campus. You start to hear things, and some of them are things that are where you learn that are unique about your campus. But as often as anything, I think most of us learn that we're experiencing some local version of a broader story. What were the changes that I heard a lot about? I heard changes and challenges in sustaining enrollment. That was a common theme across these independent colleges. Christine will share with you in the business meeting an update about our spring enrollment and foreshadowing our fall. But we are not immune. We're healthy, but we are not immune to the pressures around enrollment. In particular, in addition to that, net revenue. Moody's shared a chart that showed, I know there's been a lot of talk about affordability of higher education and tuition rates going up 3% and 4% and 5% a year. What the Moody's chart showed was after financial aid is taken into account, they project that for most places there will be about a 1% increase in net tuition revenue per student. So in other words, the idea, and when you're as tuition dependent as Edgewood College is, right, that matters. That matters pretty significantly. So with the exception of a few institutions at the top, the competition for undergraduates, for full-time students, is more fierce than it's ever been. Then there's adult education, which has gotten even more complex with the introduction of things like competency-based education. We see that in Wisconsin with the flexible degree options. We see it at the national level with the College for Americas and trends like that you're already aware of. And then the other piece that we heard a lot about, and then of course return to campus and learn more about it on Friday, is the increasing federal and in some ways state role in higher education. Certainly whether that's the kind of reporting that folks in institutional research or our business office need to do, federal rating systems and ranking systems around higher education. And then on Friday, the idea, I won't call it a proposal because I don't know what's proposed quite yet, except the idea of free community college universally. And again, I think all of us are sort of in a wait and see mode to see what exactly that means before we can determine what we think about it. But I think it's clear that if the idea gains traction, in any way, shape, or form, I think that'll be that's a potential significant change in higher education. And then on top of that, you've got this interesting trend of institutions that had previously been for-profit becoming not-for-profit. Local, did anybody see the news about Herzing College in Wisconsin, where that just happened recently? So it might seem like a pretty arcane thing. It's not that big a deal, except when it is. And in Wisconsin, for example, it is. For example, the Wisconsin tuition grant, which is financial aid that the state provides, only goes to students of either public or not-for-profit institutions of higher education. In other words, if you're for-profit and you become not-for-profit, what happens to your students in terms of eligibility for aid? They just became eligible. What happened? I don't anticipate the state expanding the size of the pie of dollars available for financial aid. So these, again, what seems to be sort of an arcane thing, in some ways plays out in ways that are rather obvious to the folks who are involved in those movements. So these are some of the changes that I think we're experiencing. Some of those we experience directly and some of them indirectly. The good news is that there's some positive changes on the horizon. We've started to see greater strength in the economy, though the recovery certainly is uneven. But there's good news in the unemployment rates. I was reminded of this yesterday. I fill up the tank with gas, less than $2 a gallon, and I could not remember the last time that happened. I'm not preparing a budget as though that's going to continue either, but that's an encouraging sign. From an economic perspective, we see, this is interesting, that the degree premium, the importance of a bachelor's degree, is higher than it's ever been. So at the same time as there's a lot of concern around, is college worth it? From an economic perspective, which again we know is more narrow than we would define the purpose of college, but it is a measure of the utility of a college degree, that degree premium is worth more than it's ever been, even for students or for people 25 to 34 who've been pretty substantially impacted by the economy since 2008. So that bodes well for interest, continuing interest in higher education. Perhaps more important to us, today's college students and prospective students aren't solely looking at economic return. What are some of the things that are important to them? Sustainability, commitment to social justice, some of the same values that we believe in practice here. So it's a great opportunity for Edgewood College to be distinctive. So after listening to Dylan, and now refreshed by my nap, I figured I'd take another shot with another book. This one's called A Year with Peter Drucker. And when I opened that, I saw one of the chapters was titled Continuity and Change. Of course, that was a theme that you may recall that I touched on in August at this same forum. I was reminded by a few points when I read through that chapter. First, that change is required to ensure continuity. This seems a little counterintuitive until you think about it, right? But this is what I had in mind when I observed that my responsibility isn't to preserve what is, right? That's not our responsibility, but rather it's to create what will be. That the best way to make sure that we enhance our ability to carry out our mission is through appropriate change. In addition, this idea that communication and partnership are essential, and I've talked a lot about us doing our work together. And I was struck really by Drucker's language. Now, he's a business writer, right? He's writing in the 1980s. But I was struck by his language around how to balance continuity and change. I quote, "One way is to make partnership and change the basis of continuing relationships." To make partnership and change the basis of continuing a relationship. So I have not gone back and looked through, but it strikes me based on that language, Drucker may have been a lay Dominican. I don't know if we'll have to go back and look in the files, but that's language that would sound pretty familiar to us. And of course, change can only be effective when there's enough continuity in terms of mission and values and agreed upon set of results. What are the elements? I talked about some of the elements of change, but what are some of the elements of continuity that we share that are still here today? Certainly our values, which you see before me, and I hope you see lived on campus every day. Our mission, our commitment to what we defined a few years ago as essential characteristics of an Edgewood College education, the foundation of the liberal arts, excellence in teaching and learning, the concept of a community of engaged learners, and the idea that inclusion and engagement with the broader community both is beneficial to our students and part of our civic responsibility. Drucker would call on us to reaffirm these commitments as we did publicly this fall in so many ways, including, and I was reminded by this by folks who stopped me, including Inauguration Week. And those of you who participated in that and helped organize it should be reminded again of the tremendous work that you did. I had tens, wasn't hundreds, but I had a lot of people approach me and talk to me about the experience they had here and how well Edgewood College represented itself. But besides putting on a good party, what did we get done first semester? We moved toward extending the budget process. Would members of the Planning and Budget Committee please stand? Those of you who are here today. Please join me in thanking them for their work. That's a committee that has 6 faculty members, the vice presidents, Jane Wilhelm from the business office, a student, and a couple of staff members. And we've worked, I think, very well together thus far in sort of laying the groundwork for not only completing this, reconciling next year's operating budget, but also for extending the time horizon in our planning and thinking about how do we invest in the things that are most important to Edgewood College. And I'm grateful for those meetings require a lot of preparation and engagement, and you've chosen well. Those of you who elected members of that committee, you have chosen very, very well. We successfully implemented the food service change, and we continue to make necessary adjustments as we move forward in that. We secured board approval for the Regina Residence Hall project, informed by the work of some quick survey work to gauge student interest from juniors and seniors. Would those people who've participated either in helping do that survey work or in designing Regina Hall or considering the work that may need to be done in Dominican, would you please stand too so we can thank you for your time? Nobody did it? It just happened? Oh, there we go. All right. Great. Thank you. Thank you. And perhaps even more importantly, we made substantial progress toward the fundraising needed to make that project go. We have pledges and payments secured right now for nearly $2.8 million of our $3.4 million fundraising goal. That's nearly 81%. Nearly 81%. We had an ambitious goal in terms of timeline, in terms of dollars. And in the midst of that, we have a transition in senior leadership. So to think about the progress that happened in the last year, would folks on the advancement staff please stand up? I think they'd be the first to tell you that they don't do that work alone. That work happens in partnership with many, many people, but it does not happen without their commitment, their passion, their talent, and their ability to go beyond what the scope they expected to be doing, and we're so grateful for that. I'm also grateful 60 faculty and staff contributed, generating directly or through the match program over $92,000 in support of that residence hall project. So we thank you. Absolutely. And we're confident that we have sufficient support and momentum. We've identified, we think, folks who are capable and willing to support the balance of the amount that we still need to raise for that. So that is tremendous progress in just a few months through the work of many, many people. We had the chance to tell our story publicly. I had a chance to do that in many ways, you know, at the inauguration, with the Rotary, television, the radio interviews, all the rest. But as important as that, our student life staff, our student life committee of the board, staffed and led by Maggie Ballestre-Clark, developed some metrics to help tell our story about the student experience outside the classroom. And similarly, our academic affairs area, under Dean's leadership, developed an academic profile. So these are ways to provide evidence and to tell our story about student success, about student achievement, and the quality of the student experience here at Edgewood College. We had a great chance. We have a great chance right now to tell our story in a distinctive way. I received news before the holidays, and the announcement came out last week, and I don't know how well the secret was kept or not. But how many of you are familiar with the Carnegie Foundation? Right, it's the Carnegie classification, sponsorship, and the size of the institution, and all the rest. What you may not know is that the Carnegie Foundation also has one elective category. It's in the area of community engagement. So institutions that want to be considered for membership or for being eligible as recognized for community engagement have to not only do meaningful work, but develop a substantial portfolio and submit that to the Carnegie Foundation for their review. We're really thrilled to learn officially last week and before that, just a little bit before the holidays, that that Edgewood College is one of only 9 schools in Wisconsin, one of only 4 independent colleges in the state to receive that community engagement classification. That work reflects not only the work we do and that application and review process. John Saltmarch, the director of the New England Research Source Center for Higher Education, says, "These are campuses that are improving teaching and learning, producing research that makes a difference in their communities, and revitalizing their civic and academic missions." Would those of you involved in preparing that and delivering on our commitment to community engagement please stand? I saw only 3 people stand, and I know that really refers to, I think, probably the direct work of actually articulating that, but I know special thanks is deserved to Tricia Dusick, Tricia, there we go, who did a lot of the work in pulling together the materials and submitting those to the Carnegie Foundation. So thank you for that work. That gives us a great opportunity to tell our story about what's distinctive about Edgewood College. In addition, we've invested substantially in engaged learning. You'll recall that a couple years ago, as part of our strategic planning process, and as an extension of the academic plan, we engaged a group to look at, particularly in the strategic plan, the area of civic engagement. As that work continued over a couple of years, it became clear that the topic was broader than that. And what we were really talking about were engaged learning practices. In December, the President's Council approved a Transformation Fund proposal that grew from that work, started in the academic plan, articulated again in the strategic plan, and fleshed out over the course of the past few years to support civic engagement, global learning, multicultural learning, internships, and student research. And you'll have a chance to learn more about that tomorrow, is that right? Tomorrow at lunch. So I'd invite you to attend that session and learn more details about that. But that's a way in which we've invested in that distinctive area for us. I think we've regained a heightened sense of community. I hope you experienced that. I hope you found that in sessions like this, or through work in progress, or college assemblies, that I'm willing to share what I know and what I think, candidly. I've been really grateful to all of you for your openness and candor, whether it's in hallway conversations or formal groups like the transition team, whether it's been in department or school meetings. Your messages have come through loud and clear. You're excited about our future, both what we might achieve and how we might go about doing that. You expect leadership committed to transparency and inclusiveness, to listening and action. And of course, reconciling those last two ends up being one of the challenges that we go through. But I'm grateful for that. More importantly than anything else, what did we do first semester? We delivered on our promise. I saw it in so many ways. I saw it in a special way. I've got to tell you personally, I saw it in a special way. You know, I've attended a lot of commencements. But it's different to be at the end of that stage and see the excitement of those students. And I know darn well they're not that excited to see Scott, but they're excited to see the president of Edgewood College, because this is a moment for them that's really memorable. And I thought, man, you know, I've got to shake 300 hands. I didn't shake 300 hands. I shook 300 people's hands once. If you get the difference there were people who were excited. That was a really defining moment. And I see they're carrying on. They're excited about receiving their degree. It's a touchstone experience. It's meaningful to them because of your work. I see it expressed at the start of the semester through orientation and residence assistants who come back to school before their summer is over to help get ready for the start of the school year. I saw it at the end of the semester in things like the poster presentations in psych, or the math department, which started having poster presentations this year. I saw it through attendance at a Rotaract meeting where I could see students who were clearly committed to service and getting ready for their professional careers. I saw it through the art on campus, whether it's the Christmas concert or Proof and the Wedding Singer. And how can you, Jeannie, how can you do Proof and Wedding Singer? How can you do two different? It'd be possible to do things that were more different than that, but I'm not sure how. I see it in art, that's the student art that's displayed now in the President's office due to David Wells' help in finding work that helps tell our story. I see it through watching our athletic teams compete, to listening to students talk about the impact of their student learning opportunities, and through the commencement remarks of both of our speakers, which struck me not only in their reflections about their achievements, but perhaps more poignantly in the times when they had failed and what they had learned through that. So what can you expect to see this spring? You've heard me talk since last March really about four topics, and that won't change. Educational environment designed to meet the needs of students today and tomorrow. We'll continue planning for our residence hall, which we know will have a significant impact on the quality of the student experience for those students. We'll continue infusing engaged learning more deeply into the full-time undergraduate learning experience. Utilizing research this summer, we'll be working to identify either new programs or potential new delivery of existing programs, specifically with graduate and adult programs. You heard me talk a few moments ago about the change in that area, and that's an area that we're going to need to continue to respond to. And certainly the topic of inclusion is one area that we need to continue to work on as well. The great news is that we have a ton of department and school level efforts, and the challenge is to coordinate our efforts around that area to have the greatest possible impact. Dean will share with you in the business part of that meeting an update on the status of some of that work. We'll also share some information at one of the engagement sessions later this morning, so you have a chance to learn a little bit more about key projects. I know some of you had a chance to review those materials that were sent out earlier this week as well. Not surprisingly, I didn't listen only to Bob Dylan on my flight home. I also heard a song from Bruce Springsteen. Any of you familiar with the song American Skin? Hands? Okay, a few of you. I just want to be sure I wasn't alone. This stage gets pretty lonely. I want to see if anybody... All right. American Skin was written and first performed in 2000. And the story is based on the experience of a young man named Amadou Diallo. Amadou was an unarmed African immigrant in New York City and was in his neighborhood one evening, I think returning home, and 4 undercover police officers saw him, and those police officers were on the look for a dangerous criminal who was in the area. And so they asked Amadou to stop. Amadou had been taught that if he had an encounter with the police, that he should present his immigration papers, which were in his pocket, which, when he pulled out his wallet, was not... You can see where this story ends. The subtitle of the song is 41 Shots, which is the number of shots that were fired, with the predictable result from there. What struck me as I heard that music was that powerful, haunting song, written in 2000 about an event that happened in 1999, could have resonated like it had been written just a few weeks or months ago, and with a few changes, could have had a slight change of story. And to be clear, I'm not condemning anybody involved in the situation. I think we can all agree, though, that it's tragic when we continue to see recurring themes happening. Next week, we'll have the semester will start. Not only does the semester start next week, but it's Dream Week. And it's a week where we have a lot of events designed to help heighten our awareness of the topic of inclusion. And I want to invite you to attend those events that you're able to, and include your students in attending as many as they are able to as well. If we need any reminder about the importance of this topic, all we have to do is take a look in the newspapers, or if we need a reminder, take a listen to that particular song. So as part of our responsibility, inclusion is an important part of our mission, and that's a topic you can expect to learn some more about. Second thing you've heard me talk about is delivering on and articulating on our impact to the community. That happens certainly through civic engagement and through internships. And in addition, I expect to continue to have the opportunity to tell stories on your behalf. And that we'll continue improving how we do that using electronic media, especially as we hit what is yield time of year for the freshman class. Really important to try to do that. Our financial model. That, of course, we have to have a sound financial model to support the educational experience and the impact on the community. We'll extend our budget process in time, and we'll finish the 2015-16 budget in February, and we'll turn our attention immediately to extending the time frame there. We'll be looking at where can we grow our revenue. Not only where can we improve what we're doing right now, but are there new programs, whether it's academic, athletic, are there new things we can do in terms of delivery? Can we use summer more often? What can we do to continue to improve the revenue side? And of course, ensuring we're spending our resources as wisely as we possibly can, have the greatest impact on student learning. And finally, as always, we're going to do that work together. I look forward to spending more time with students this semester. That didn't happen as much as I wanted to. This fits a little bit into the conversation I was having with a couple folks earlier about, well, I think it's part of the human condition where we have more ambitious goals for ourselves than we may be able to achieve in a certain period of time. I had visions that I would have all these interactions with student groups and things like that, and then my schedule hit. In reality, fit in, but I will find some time. I'll be working with Nick Hefty from Student Government to interact not only with students on this campus, but also, and perhaps in particular, at Deming Way. I also intend to spend some more time with faculty and staff. We structured a couple of opportunities to engage with the President's Council and with faculty and staff in connection with President's Council meetings. I think the idea is a good one. I think it's just really hard to do that on a Wednesday morning when, of course, many of you are teaching or at your desk. So what you can expect is some opportunities throughout the semester to have that kind of engagement as well. And I also expect that we'll start a conversation about the concept of shared governance and, more importantly, shared responsibility. So as we look at our future, what's my role? What's the role of the board? What's the role of the faculty? What role do we play in defining and carrying out our future? One final book, a book I wish I'd had with me. I didn't fall asleep, but I only read a chapter of this, so I don't know. But does this look familiar to anybody? Okay, written about 10 years ago, Phoenix from the Fire. Now that was an appropriate title because the story really illustrates of how Edgewood College, the book could have ended. It could have been the final edition. I think we're all grateful that it's not. But it could have ended at any point because as the college dealt with a number of catastrophes over many years. Now, I don't know what the next history will be called. I think Maggie has in mind an updated version. But I hope it's not called Phoenix from the Fire. Because like a lot of, when I talk to my colleagues, a lot of them are at institutions that are making substantial changes, including questioning their core values, in part because they waited until things got dire to make changes. It makes for a great story, but I don't have any interest in going back into the fire. I'd rather see us, a soaring, thriving institution, do even better without having to do that. And that, I know that's difficult in an organization that's been as successful as Edgewood College has been for as long as we have. I'm not asking for change for the sake of change, but instead the kind of change that Drucker was thinking about and talking about, that when grounded in our core values and mission, sustains continuity and success. The kind of change that occurs when we study communally and search contemplatively in pursuit of excellence in teaching and learning. The kind of change that emerges when we speak courageously, when we engage transparently, and when we collaborate intentionally with each other. The kind of change that happens organically when we live boldly and authentically in service of our community. The kind of change we're drawn to when we dream globally in pursuit of building a just and compassionate world. And the kind of change that honors our past by creating ever anew an Edgewood College that meets the needs of our world today and tomorrow. It's been an amazing first semester. I've learned so much. And I'm grateful every single day for your trust, your confidence, and your partnership in pursuing our important work together. The work we do together has never been more important. And I stand here today and I can say that I've never been more confident in our ability to do it well. Thank you.